Okay. Good evening and welcome, everyone. My name is Caroline Broussard, and I am the chair of the North Region Special Education Local Plan Area Community Advisory Committee. I am so glad that you have all decided to join us this evening for this presentation that discusses the new um, law that requires screening of students in kinder through second grade for reading difficulties. I just want to touch on a couple of housekeeping items before we start our official program. The first one is if you're welcome to ask questions during the presentation. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and come off of mute to share your question, or you can use the chat for your questions. Please do reserve the chat for questions. We don't have a separate Q&A portion for this Zoom meeting. So it's really helpful for us to have the chat just reserved for questions and not side commentary or conversation, because it makes it more difficult for us to be able to filter for the questions that folks want to raise during this presentation. Please remain muted unless you're asking a question. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will live on our resource library, which is on the North Region SELPA webpage under Community Advisory Committee. There you can find a lot of videos from our past events. Really great programming there, so I would suggest you take a look at that. And if you find this session helpful, please consider joining this Community Advisory Committee to help produce future educational sessions such as this one. It really takes a village to create great programming like this one, and we can use some fresh ideas. So if you're interested and have some time to donate your time and talent to this committee, we'd love to have you. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure and privilege to introduce Lindsay Nofelt, who is a reading advocate and co-founder of Reading for Berkeley, a grassroots organization in the Bay Area. Reading for Berkeley works to help ensure that all Berkeley Unified School District students, regardless of color, socioeconomic status, or disability, learn to read. In the past 4 years, we have seen the federal class action settlement in Berkeley as an opportunity to address the pervasive problem of how we teach kids to read and how we support those who struggle, an issue common to many schools in California and nationwide. Lindsay, thank you so much for being here today. Give me 1 second, I'll have your presentation shared and we can get started.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And the purpose of this presentation tonight is really to go through what you can expect now that all school districts in California have to screen for reading difficulty every year in kindergarten through grade 2. We're just waiting for the screen to populate. Thanks. So this presentation will be pretty quick, a good complete overview. And then following that, we have resources for the specific districts in the North Region SELPA. But this information applies to all school districts in California. Next slide, please. We're really being family focused here. We want people to understand what to expect now that these screeners are happening in K through 2, and now that districts must share the results and respond to any red flags. Next slide. We'll go through an overview of the law, SB 114. Then we'll review district responsibilities. We'll share what the screening process looks like, what the results look like, and what to do if you get a red flag back on your student's report. So, in 2023, After a decade plus of advocacy from many statewide groups like Decoding Dyslexia, a law was passed that made California, like most other states in the country, that require some type of screener early on in their educational career to figure out who might be struggling to learn how to read. So every year in K through 2, every kid in California has to be screened with one of four approved screeners. In kindergarten, often the district will wait a little bit, but in grades 1 and 2, it's often done in the beginning of the school year so that the district has the most time possible to respond to the results. If you enter a new district at any time during the school year, they have to screen your student within 45 days of that enrollment date. So nobody's left behind, nobody's missed. After the screener is done, that result has to be shared with the families, along with info on how to read the results and any next steps that are necessary. So, for instance, if there's a red flag, and a red flag usually is denoted by the color red on the reports. There's a lot of links on this deck if you are interested in learning the exact details and wording of the law, but we'll go through a lot of the parts that are relevant to families in the following slides. So I want to take a moment to review what reading screeners are and are not. So I think that it's really important to know that the results are used as a flag for a potential risk, but they are not the everything. They are not a diagnosis of dyslexia. They are not a life sentence. They're a point in time measurement. The results can inform what people do next for students with reading difficulty. It could even prompt the start of an assessment to see if a student qualifies for an IEP. But as itself, as a single point of data, it cannot say that your child or student is eligible for an IEP. That requires more investigation. The screeners can provide information, and that's a good way, a basis for parents and educators to discuss your students' needs with a validated and informed way. But it is not the only source of information about student needs. You can think of many reasons why a test might not be a complete picture of a student. Even something as simple as not eating enough breakfast on the day of the exam could skew results. Or if a kid has a bad day for another reason, or it was noisy during the exam. So you'll want multiple measurements for your student, but the tests themselves are validated and a good way to start conversations. Districts have to assess at least once a year, but a lot of the ones in our area do it more frequently. They have to do it each year in kindergarten, first and second grades. If a student passes the reading difficulty screener the previous year, they still need to take it again in the next grades. And this screener needs to be done in the primary language of the student. So All of these screeners are available in Spanish as well as English, and some are available in other languages as well. But the district should be doing it in the primary language of the student if it's available. Parents can opt out of the test. They have the right to get the results within 45 days of the screener being done, and they have the right to understand the results of the screener. Screening for kids who already have IEPs or 504s or speech difficulties is still very important. Parents can opt out, but it's recommended that even if a student has an IEP, screening can be important. Kids who have autism, for example, may have reading difficulties that are not recognized. And far too often, reading challenges are missed because there's an existing special education eligibility. Basically, what I'm saying is that the test is a reliable source of data, and more data is usually more better. If your student is identified as needing support, then the district should provide the student with supports and services appropriate to the specific challenges identified by the screening instrument. So, for example, if your student scored poorly in phoneme segmentation fluency, so didn't necessarily match the sounds of the letters to the letters quickly enough, then support should be provided in that area. The screening process varies based on which selection your district made. Most of our SELPA districts are using DIBELS. It's been around for a really long time, and it can be used as often as needed. It's done one-on-one. It takes about 5 minutes, and there's lots of information for you if you're curious about what that looks like. Amira is used in Alameda. It can be used as often as needed also. There are choices in the format. It can be used one-on-one, or each student can have their own computer, and the device listens to the student and does the assessment all as a whole class. It takes about 10 to 20 minutes, and I have the links to learn more for Amira as well. Multitudes was chosen by Emory in addition to Dibbles. Multitudes is the screener that the state developed. It can only be used once annually, and it's one-on-one with each person, the student and the teacher, on an internet device. Takes about 15 minutes. So none of these are very burdensome in comparison with how reading was screened previous to this law. I chose the Dibbles result example because most of our area districts have chosen that screener, but you can expect a similar content, if not similar style, for the other screeners. So what happens is you get a report. They're usually available in many different languages, so your district can produce them in your home language. Depending on the grade level that your child is at, you'll see different scores. And those scores will tell you if your child is reading on grade level for the beginning, middle, or end of year or not. And it is highlighting skills that should be in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. And those skills drop off as the students get older. So, for example, in kindergarten and first grade, they test on letter naming, but in second grade, they don't need to anymore because most children are expected to know the letter names by that point. Similarly, in first grade, they start asking them about reading out loud small passages. In kindergarten, that's not expected. So your report will be tailored to your child's age range and grade level, and it will show where your child needs support and where your child is meeting or exceeding their grade level. With some of the screeners, you can get that done more frequently, and then you can map where your child was and where your child is. So, if your child or student has a report that has red flags on it, you should have gotten or will get a letter that comes with the results that describes what will be done to help your student. It might be a form letter, it might not be specific to your child's situation. So it is reasonable that you would have questions. So the first step, if you have questions about your student, is to ask your student's teacher for more details. What exactly is going to be done to help your student in the areas where they need help? The next thing, if you still have questions or you think that the support isn't helping as much as it could, you could ask for a meeting with the teacher and the principal to discuss how to help your student get success. If you feel like there are other data points that you've seen at home that could suggest something like dyslexia, or especially if dyslexia runs in your family, the red flag might be a signal for you to write a letter to start the process of a special education assessment. And lastly, each one of our districts has documentation on their multi-tiered system of support. And that basically is the pyramid of interventions that are available for students in your district and the systematic approach that they use to find out what level of intensity of instruction your student might need in order to get success. The point is to try and identify students before third grade who might have reading difficulties and intervene immediately as early as possible, because that's when statistically we have the most success in addressing reading difficulty. Next, we have the appendix, which are links to uniform complaints, to letter templates, and to the specific information and details about each of the screeners that our area schools have selected, as well as links to who to contact in each district and links to their multi-tiered system of support information. The language can be simple in your letter templates. You don't have to write a whole lot. Um, and it can be a friendly, quick check-in. All of the screeners use similar measurements. Sometimes they call them different things, which can be confusing, which is why it's perfectly valid to reach out to your district contacts to understand more. Amira has a particularly special way to show reading mastery, which is um, a grade level and month rating for each student. And Multitudes has a similar function to Dibbles where they're trying to show you that they don't do each segment for every single grade. They only do what's appropriate for that range. The reading screeners are owned by the general education services departments and not by special education, although special education might get involved if you decide to ask for further assessment. This is for every student to try and catch people as early as possible. So that's why it's a general education responsibility. And that's why these contacts are all from those departments. And MTSS can be very confusing. So it would be reasonable to have a lot of questions about this as well. But here are the links for each district that shows what happens if there are red flags and at what point intensity should increase. There's an important note about intensity. For most students, if the district is using an evidence-based instruction in the general classroom, then what should be offered in tier 2 is just more repetition of that evidence-based instruction because we don't want to confuse students. We want to trample down those neural pathways that might need a little bit more help than other students. It's normal to have a spectrum in classrooms, and it's normal for some people to need more hardening of those neural pathways in order to read successfully. Are there any questions?
I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other.
I know this is a lot to digest. So if you do have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to the Community Advisory Committee at the North Region SELPA, and I will get your questions and I'll do my best to point you to the resources for your district. And I hope that people find this helpful. There's other opportunities to find out about this reading screening. There's an article in EdSource recently that detailed a lot of these same things. And Leslie Zaroya is speaking to the 3rd District PTA in Sacramento about some of these very same topics on Thursday, October 23rd.
Any
Thank you.
questions, comments, thoughts? We have a small and quiet group today, but that's okay. That means you knocked it
It's
out of
a
the park,
Monday.
Lindsay. I thought this was very clear and super helpful, Lindsay. Thank you so much for taking the time to do the research and put it all together for us. particularly the district-specific information that is really,
I,
really helpful. And
I
as
think that that's where we can help our SELPA by providing very specific links because they can be hard to find.
absolutely. And as I
Well,
mentioned at the top of this meeting, this recording will live on our CAC webpage. So if you missed any part of this, or I know some folks who might be interested that couldn't be with us this evening, in a couple of weeks, it'll be on our website and they can catch up. Joanne, were you going to ask a question?
oh, I was just gonna ask if we could get access to the slides, but I'm guessing it will be on the SELPA site.
Yes, it will be.
Okay, thank you so much.
And if you want to send me an email, Joanne, or drop your email address in the chat, I could probably get that to you a little quicker. Your choice. Anyone else? Any questions, thoughts, comments? Okay. Well, Lindsay, again, thank you so much. This was super, super informative and helpful. Really appreciate your time and effort into this. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. As I
Thank you
mentioned
so
at
much.
My pleasure. As I mentioned at the top of this presentation, if you might be interested in joining the CAC, there's a membership application in the chat. I also put in the email address, general email address, admin@northregionselpacac.org. Feel free to inbox us with any questions you might have about what this committee does, what membership looks like, what the time commitment might be. But you are welcome to join the effort that this incredible team does in advocating for students with disabilities across our 5 districts, SELPA. And if there are no questions, I will bid you all a lovely, lovely evening, and thank you again for joining us this evening. Have a great night, everybody.